is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.
England summer starts here. The first test against New Zealand just a couple of days away. We've got great weather. Philip, fans will be back in the ground. Are you ready to go? Done your pre-season?
What's pre-season? What's that, Chappers?
Well,
no,
your pre-season could be very different to a lot of people's pre-season. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I am ready to go. I've had my jabs. Lords is going to look amazing. New Zealand are in town. I am really excited, but remember to bring your sun cream because I got burnt to a crisp today. Never learn.
During the show, we are going to hear from England head coach Chris Silverwood. Michael, you spoke to him. How did you find him?
Yeah, he was in good form. Actually, since I played with him, I haven't had a chance to kind of have many conversations, so it was nice to ask him a few questions. Obviously, he's now the head coach. He's the main selector, a new role for him. He was in great form, so looking forward to the summer ahead.
Well, talk to what are you doing,
We are the
Phil?
Daleks.
What are you doing? This is coming out all the way through Michael's answer. Phil's trying to hit buttons in front of him because it was echoing around. Are you all right? Have you sorted it?
All sorted, mate. All
Excellent.
sorted.
We'll talk New Zealand as well. Jeremy Coney will join us a little bit later on Tuffers and Vaughan.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
On 5 Live.
Yes, so the next hour is all about previewing England's cricketing summer and the series against New Zealand, and we'll hear from Chris Silverwood in that interview with Michael. We might hear ourselves coming back as well, depending on whether Phil's turned the volume off on his computer. And really, before we've even got to... Well, it's not really. I mean, it's factual. Before we've even got to the first test, we've got another unlucky injury, haven't we, Michael, in Ben Foakes?
Yeah, his hamstring went. I think he was walking through the dressing room, if that's right. What I hear, it's a bad one. It's one of those, not little flimmers of the hamstring. It's a tear, so that's unfortunate for Ben Foakes. We did speak to James Bracey last week on the Tuffers and Vaughan, and we mentioned that, get ready because things happen. We were actually explaining to him that he should go and shake one of the top order's hands rather hard and make sure, particularly Dom Sibley, whose finger's been an issue, but to potentially get that role. But he's got his position by default, and we wish him well. I mentioned James Bracey to Chris Silverwood in the interview, and everything that we said about him after the interview last week about him being very level-headed, mature. The character side of the player, me and Phil both said it's amazing really. These players speak with so much maturity and so different to when we were coming through, and Chris Silverwood just backed up everything that we said. He said that's exactly what he is. He's full of character. When he was in India, he basically every single minute he was there, he made sure that he was trying to improve, and we wish him well. He's going to bat at number 7. Nice position to bat, and he's got to get the gloves on. So we wish him all the best, but it's unfortunate for Ben Foakes.
Yeah, they're like finely tuned horse races nowadays, aren't they? They sneeze now and they go in the hamstring, don't they? It's unbelievable. Crawley went in India, didn't he?
Phil. 2 feet.
They're 2 feet. If you haven't got any muscles, Mike, you can't pull them. That was my mantra. If you haven't got any, you can't pull them. But, I mean, he'll be devastated, folks. I do feel for him. But there again, Bracey gets the nod.
Well, there are a couple of other things with this. Is
Chris Cowdrey pulled a hamstring driving to the ground, I think. He had a manual
Was he
car.
late?
Yeah, he had a manual car, and I think he pulled a hamstring. And I was on tour when Philip de Freitas slipped getting out the bath and did a groin as well. Yeah. So you've got to be careful.
There were. I don't think you have to say they were all manual cars back then, Phil.
Yeah. There's no electric ones knocking around there.
No electric ones there. The other thing with Bracey is going back to what he was talking to us last week about. He kept wicket in the nets in India, didn't he? Partly so he could watch whoever was batting to pick up as much information, as many tips as possible. But that is going to come in really useful.
Yeah, I think, he'll be nervous. Don't you worry about that.
Oh, yeah,
Lords, and especially keeping wicket, you want to feel that first couple of balls go into the gloves or that first nick comes along. You want to make sure you grab hold of it. I mean, the batting kind of I don't know whether you agree, Mike, sort of looks after itself a little bit, but the keeping, the old hands can get a little bit electric. You've got to get into the game. So, just keep the fingers crossed. And that first little nick, let's hope it's a nice little one that just rests into the gloves, and off he runs.
Yeah, well, Phil, I think what it also shows that, someone like James Bracey was in the bubble last summer. They've changed the name of the bubble to, I think it's called a controlled safe environment now. But you can do yourself so much good by, even though you're not in the squad, you're in the bubble. When he was on tour in India, and he's kind of in the periphery of the team and not really looking like playing, but you can have such an impression on the coaches by just going about your business in a professional manner, really kind of trying to improve, trying to ask questions. I remember back when I was probably 2001, I got injured in Pakistan or Sri Lanka. I can't remember. I didn't start the series. I had an injury. And I thought to myself, what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and just really learn from being in the nets with the likes of Graham Thorpe, Nasser Hussain, Michael Atherton, pick the brain of Duncan Fletcher. It's always nice, and it's always handy if you go next to the coach and start asking the coach some questions. You've got to try and really use that time as well as you can as a player. I think someone like James Bracey...
Is that brown nosing?
Yeah, it's called making sure that you're... you can call it brown nosing, you can call it many other things, Phil, but it serves you very well. If you're that kind of character that you get up in the morning and you go, right, I'm going to go to training as if I'm playing, and I'm going to ask questions, I'm going to try and improve. And when you get to the summer and they're trying to pick a team, they always go, remember that kid in the winter? That was on. Yeah. He was a good kid, and we want that kind of character in the team. And I've got a sense with this James Bracey. As I said to you last week, Ed Smith has mentioned James Bracey a couple of years. It's not that these just come through this system. Ed's now moved to a side, and Chris Silver will be the main selector. But having a good character and being a good person, it basically gets you up the chain, doesn't it, Phil? It gets you up the ladder a little bit higher than some others.
But I think you can say tourist. I think you can say the same. You can say the same about Folkes here as well. Because reading the stuff with Bracey today, he said, even though Folkes must be devastated that he's out and has done his hamstring, so he has been talking to Bracey and offering as much advice on the keeping side of things as he possibly can. And they were talking on the Monday Night Club earlier. You can have people within your group who are, don't get in the team and bring everybody else down because they're not in it, or you can have those that don't get in the team and lift everybody even though they're not in the team.
Well, I'll give you another name,
and it
Sam Billings.
Counts for a lot.
Sam Billings is in the squad. Sam Billings has not been mentioned in Test cricket for a while. I'll go back 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking about Sam Billings. Yeah. Sam Billings gets in many, many one-day teams, T20 franchises, now in the England Test squad. He's obviously a very talented player and he's got the game, but he is a great teammate and a great team person in and around the group. And there'll be loads of cynics out there. Oh, that's not required. You just pick the best players. When you're picking a squad, you look at football now and they're trying to pick that Euro. Gareth Southgate will be thinking, right, who are the best players? He'll have his 11 or his 14 that he thinks is going to play a lot. But those on the periphery, you need good people and good squad members. And that's exactly why the likes of Sam Billings gets in lots and lots of teams, because he's a really good squad player. Yeah.
All the youngsters, though, Mike, all the youngsters who are coming through. I can remember when Don Bess was, we were at Lord's, weren't we? And it was one of his first games. I think it was against Pakistan or something like that. First thing he came up to was to me and just said, "Hello, Mr. Tufnell." You know what I mean? Any sort of suggestions or anything
time
like that?
Been called Mr. Tufnell.
Well, yeah, I think he did call me Mr. Tufnell. I think he did. And so, and all these guys that we have interviewed, and they've just been so well sort of drilled and so well trained, not only in their game and their skills and what have you, but just how to conduct themselves and about the whole sort of like team ethos. Back in the day, there were a few guys who were a little bit prickly, I'd have to say, you know what I mean? But these guys now, they're all going for the same goal.
Mr. Tufnell, were you one of those prickly ones?
Yeah, I wasn't.
You make Don Bess sound like a character out of Oliver. With the way he addressed it.
He was like Fagin. I was like Fagin, I was.
Let's hear from the England head coach then, and now national selector Chris Silverwood. He spoke to Michael earlier about this new role of his, national selector, the selection of the England team, and also how much he's looking forward to this New Zealand series.
These two tests against New Zealand, I mean, they're a good team. You know that. You know, you've got your senior pros in the likes of Anderson, Broad and Root. Apart from that, it's a young England team. I guess with that, there's huge opportunities for players, isn't there?
Well, that's how I see it, to be honest. It's obviously we've rested certain players, which, as you rightly say, creates opportunity for others. And you know, I mean, as I've said already, I mean, the great thing for me will be to see those young players take those opportunities to go out there and thrive. You know, I mean, the guys that could possibly come in have already spent a lot of time with us, so they know what it's like to be around the dressing room. One of the positives that's come out of the COVID environment is the fact that I've spent a lot of time with them as well. So I've got to know how they tick. They've got to know how we work as a group. And like I say, that coming into that dressing room, hopefully now will be a lot easier for them. The transition will be better. And I just want to see them go out there and perform and enjoy themselves. And I think there's a great opportunity in this series for them to do that.
And just tell us about a couple of the players that, you know, a lot of the England fans won't know a great deal about. We had James Bracey on the Tuffers and Vaughan last week, and both me and Tuffers were saying, you know, how impressive he was talking about his game, about cricket in general. Very mature for 24. We were laughing that we certainly wouldn't have been speaking in that kind of fashion back in the 90s when we came through. He just sounded like a very rounded human being.
He is. I think you've summed him up nicely there, if I'm honest. The one thing that's overriding to me is how quickly he learned. Obviously, he came into the bubble with us, the safe living environment down at the Aegeus last year. And that's where I really started to get to know him. But like I said, the one thing I did see about him was a very fast learner, very diligent with the way he goes around his preparation. He's got a very clear idea of where he wants to go and how he's going to get there. There's real method in his training. But one of the impressive things for me throughout sort of India was watching how somebody that was probably quite far removed from playing at certain times in India still got up every day and he squeezed every little bit out of that trip that he could do to make sure that he came home a better player when he arrived. And I think that shows the character of a kid as well. So, you know, I mean, again, having seen him go through all that, you just want him to do well because, you know, I mean, he's worked hard and deserves it.
And where's he going to bat, Silvers? Is he going to bat at 7?
I think so. I think it'd be a big ask. I mean, you know, he can cover the top order, and we've had him there as cover for top order before. We know he's more than capable of doing that. Whether it be fair for somebody to come in and debut, cover the top order, or bat the top order and keep, maybe a little bit much so. Obviously, myself, Thorpe, Collie, Joe in particular will sit down and have a chat. More than likely, he'll bat down the ODS.
Haseeb Hameed came back into the squad. What have you seen in him over the last few weeks that giving you that kind of indication that he was ready to come back into the England Test squad?
I think, yeah, he's produced at county level, hasn't he? I mean, that's what we can judge on. You know, I mean, he's averaging what? I think it was 52 he's averaging so far this summer. Or he certainly was before the last game. And, you know, I mean, just the way he goes about his business, I think it will suit our top order. The way that we're setting up, I think the way he, like I said, the way he bats will suit our top order.
And that is to see off that new ball?
Well, it's not only to see off. Obviously, they've got to score as well. You know what I mean? So it is about taking the innings deep. It's about making the bowlers come back into the second, third, fourth spells and making sure we're capitalising on that. You know what I mean? So I think if you look at how we've set up in that top 3 predominantly so far, he could fit into that naturally. He would fit the game plan. The way he goes about his business.
And another player that we've, again, not seen a great deal of, Ollie Robinson. I saw him at Yorkshire when he was there a few years ago. Always thought he had so much talent. He had a few discipline problems at the time, but I think that's made him. You know, he's gone down to Sussex and clearly has improved his game, his probably professionalism. And now he's got an opportunity of making a debut. What does he bring to the team?
Well, we've seen from a county point of view, I mean, he takes wickets, doesn't he? You look at his average in this year's counties. He's doing what he always does. He takes wickets. His average is down. I mean, his economy rate's down. His average is good. He's a highly skillful bowler. He finds movement. If there's any movement around, he will find it with his presentation of the seam and the height from which he delivers from. You know what I mean? I think you're right. I think he's still work in progress to a certain extent, but weren't we all at that age as well? You know what I mean? We're just sort of finding his way. But I think he's got a lot to offer from a bowling perspective. If he gets a chance, I'm sure, again, he's worked hard, on the skill side of things to make sure that he thrives as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the balance of the side. No Ben Stokes. It makes it so much more difficult to get the right balance. Stokes, he just gives you that cushion, doesn't he, with bat and ball. Your number 8 will have to be someone that can hold the bat, I guess.
Yeah, well, You would. No, it does. However you cut it, Ben leaves a big hole in there. As your fourth seamer and somebody that can bat 5, it leaves a massive hole for us. As do, obviously there's no Walks and no Curran as well. You'd be happy with either of those batting 7 as well. So for me, it's however way you cut it, it could look a little lopsided, the team. But I think I've got to accept that, and I've got to make the best of what we've got here. And actually, as you say, that number 8, if they are capable, which we have got people that are capable in there, we've seen Robinson and Overton have both scored important runs under pressure for their counties this summer already. So I'm confident that either one of those, could potentially fill that number 8 spot.
And just going back to the winter, I thought Jack Leach came through it with flying colours from where he was last year with obviously his illness and didn't play a great deal. And then to suddenly arrive in Sri Lanka, looked a bit rusty, understandably, in that first test, and just got better and better and better throughout the winter. It's a big summer for Jack Leach to really, really establish himself being his number 1 spinner.
I think he's done. He's done fantastically. If you look at the journey he's been on, last summer, didn't play. He didn't play 1 game all year. Then to come out there and perform as he did in Sri Lanka and India, and that was a turning point for me. Is when Pant tucked into him in one of the tests. He could have got it away there. But what we saw is somebody push back hard and get himself back into the game. He enjoyed catching Pant out that innings. And then obviously from there on in, sort of getting him out as well. And the way he reacted to that situation, I think really made him for the rest of the tour, giving him the confidence that, I belong here. And I think we saw Jack Leach grow immensely in that tour.
You'd certainly be looking at a spinner with the weather this week. I heard a couple of reports saying they may not go with a spinner. You go with Jack Leach?
Well, you'll have to wait and see on that one. But, it's like I say, whatever happens, the team will look a little bit imbalanced one way or the other, but you'll have to wait and see on that one.
And just now you're the main selector. First and foremost, Ed Smith's role, it got a move to one side. When was that decision made?
Well, obviously you've spoken to Ash about this as well. So, it's something that I suppose Ash had been thinking about for a while. And it was made around the time that it was obviously communicated to everybody.
And you sit comfortably being that main person, you're the main selector? The kind of book stops with you. I did hear Gilo mention that if it doesn't go so well over the next month, the book stops with Silvers. I was like, hello, that's a nice little throw too. So it's all on you, mate.
It is, but to be honest, if you have a look at him, the reality, if the team doesn't do well, then it stops with me anyway. And if you look at the rest of the sports around the world, football, rugby, things like that, then that's how it works. So it's a modernisation of the game. There's no excuse for communication not to be good now because it's me that's doing it. And equally the players know where the communication is coming from, and if they need to speak to anybody, they know who that person is, which is me. And I'll know exactly what I've said to them because it will have been me that has delivered that message in the first place. So, from a pressure point of view, I don't think it changes too much. Obviously it's maybe a little bit busier, around selection time and obviously that communication that needs to be done with the players. But ultimately, you've seen it all before, mate, that if a team aren't doing well, then the coach is usually under pressure anyway. So what's the difference?
Yeah, just on, that relationship that you have with your players, will that slightly change now that you're the main selector? Say someone's got an issue with their technical side of bowling, whereas in, the old kind of regime, they'd probably come knocked on your door and said Silvers. Do you think that'll still happen, or do you think they may be a little bit vulnerable in terms of knowing that you're the main selector now?
I think initially there will be maybe a little bit of nervousness about coming in and knocking on my door. You see it when I moved from sort of bowling coach to head coach, then the players talk a little bit less to you. And I saw that at county level as well, obviously. And I expect the same sort of thing to happen. But hopefully over a period of time, if I'm consistent and fair in the decisions I'm making, and there's logic and method behind what I'm doing, then hopefully those barriers will get broken down and the players will still feel that they can come and talk to me about anything they want, really. That's certainly what I will be encouraging. What I've got to make sure I do is make sure I'm consistent with, the way I make decisions, and there's logic behind them, and make sure that they know that whatever decision I make is for the best of the team, and that's where I will start from.
So that was Chris Silverwood talking to Michael earlier.
Doesn't seem fazed by it, does he? That new role? No. Fair. No, the boys don't need to be nervous. Come and see me. He's that kind of guy, though, Chris Silverwood. He really is an honest kind of fella. You couldn't wish for anyone else to, go up to talk to about your game and sort of like be able to, put it to one side and I can't even say it.
Compartmentalise.
Thank you very much. He sounds like he's going to relish that task, and he's straight talking, Chris Silverwood, and he wants to know, if I've said it, I know I've said that. There's no dispute about it. I like that.
Yeah, Phil, that's exactly what I picked up from that little segment of the interview. He said, "No excuse, communication isn't good."
Yeah,
which you read into that what you wish. And maybe if you're
what did you read into it?
I read into that if I'm in charge of English cricket, which he is, I want to make sure that I'm communicating with the players that aren't playing or are playing, or you're leaving out of a squad. And if you have someone else doing that for you, that conversation may differ, or the feedback a player may get may differ, or it might be not the message that you want to give as yourself. So I was really impressed by that answer, that he wants to be solely in charge of telling the player he's not playing, explaining why. You go back over the last year or so, and particularly if you go back to the start of last summer, and we're almost in that same situation for this week with Anderson and Broad, that Stuart Broad didn't get picked for that first test at the Ageas Bowl against the West Indies, having had a good time of it in South Africa. Jimmy Anderson was picked, and Stuart Broad gave that interview, which, for us on the other side of the fence now, it was a great interview. I'm not too sure that kind of interview will be done again with Chris Silverwood solely in charge. I don't think we'll get to that stage. But I thought he spoke with great clarity. He was very precise in what he was trying to say. And he had authority, basically saying, look, I want to make sure that communication is one that I'm giving rather than letting someone else give that information.
So can I just clarify something here? That if a player was left out of a squad, then that would be communicated by Ed Smith. If out of a squad of 12 or 13, you aren't in the 11, is in the past, was that communicated by the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I can only go from my time, Chappers, is that,
did you phone him up,
as an England captain, Duncan Fletcher as the coach, with David Graveney, Jeff Miller at the time, we'd pick a squad of players, and we'd have communication about the squad of players that we're picking. As soon as the squad was picked, it was down to me and Duncan to pick the team. And of course, they were there on Wednesday and on the Thursday morning. Most test matches in my time started on a Thursday morning, and of course you'd have a conversation, but realistically it was down to me and Duncan and senior players and a backroom team to try and work out what we felt was the best 11, and then it was down to me as the captain to go up to that player or two players and say, I'm sorry, but you're not in the best 11, or what we feel is the best 11 for this week in these conditions. I don't think a great deal has changed, other than I think Chris Silver will be the one that's picking the squad, and he's the main selector that we'll be bringing around to make sure that, people know exactly, are they in, are they not, and he's giving that communication to the players that aren't, more importantly, because those that are in, they're with you all week anyway, so you can explain everything, but those that aren't in, you have to get on the phone and explain why.
Yeah, well, when I played, I wasn't really fussed about the explanation. I just wanted it, to be, I think it breeds confidence, actually. You know what I mean? You don't have to keep saying, oh, well, we think this and we think that, and, your form hasn't been great and this kind of the other. You know what I mean? Am I playing or not? You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. And I think that's then what Chris can then convey to the players. We've thought about it. We've thought about it long and hard. I'm a very fair bloke. I'm not picking my favourites or this, that and the other, and someone else has been in my ear and someone else has been saying that this bloke's really good and I've seen him play well and what have you. This is my decision. I've given it a lot of thought, and this is this is the reason why. Hard lines, keep going. That's really, as a player, I think all you really need.
And I think this week, Phil, as a main selector, he's probably got a tough week because there's no Ben Stokes, so you haven't got that fifth bowling option.
No Wokes,
I guess
no Cohen.
Joe Root is the fifth bowling option, but you can't imagine with the weather that we're having that you're going to have Joe Root as a sole spinner. So Jack Leach surely plays. So you've then got three seamers. And you go Broad and Anderson. If you go Broad and Anderson, that means that probably a Wood or a Stone doesn't play, that extra bit of pace, which England have craved for and have liked to go with. They like to go with a quick bowler. They know they're going to need pace in a few months' time down in Australia. If Broad and Anderson play and you don't go with a Wood, that means, Ollie Stone or an Overton plays at 8 because you want that extra bit of batting. And like I said in the interview, this way England will look a little bit imbalanced one way or the other, because you go with Broad and Anderson, and that means possibly, Wood doesn't play, so you're lacking that pace, and that means you go Robinson or an Overton, Broad and Anderson, all 84 to 85 miles an hour. You've not got the extra bit of pace. If you go with a Wood or a Stone, probably Wood, that means Broad and Anderson, one of those doesn't play this week. Yeah. And
Stuart's not going to be happy. Stuart's not going to be happy.
And will he storm and do the interview again? But Chris Silverwood has just got to make the right call for the team for what he feels is, number one, is they've got to win. I look at this week, England have got to win. They got beaten heavily in India, and the next time out, home conditions, I believe that Chris Silver should just pick his best team of what he feels is the right team to win now. Don't worry about in 6 months' time. Just try and win this first test match of the summer. The crowds are back, and try and win it. If that means that Broad and Anderson just play them both. Just try and get a first win of the summer up your sleeve.
Yeah. Do you sacrifice number 8 then? Someone batting at number 8 to play Broad and Anderson, or do you, I think you should. Yeah.
I personally would go with
You'd be crazy not to pick.
I personally would go this week. And I know I asked the question about surely your number 8 needs to be back. I was just trying to. I was trying to be a journalist, actually, chap.
Oh, were you? You've been subtle, Michael.
I was trying to get
something out of him, were you?
Yeah, I was. I will admit that to Chris now. I personally would go Broad, Anderson and Wood this week. 3, high-class seam bowlers. I need a victory and Jack Leach. That's 4 bowlers that I believe I can trust in all conditions. I believe I've got a formation of those 4 that can bowl on the first day, the second day, third or fourth or fifth day. I'd go with my best 4 bowlers.
Is it?
Yeah, from what he was saying, though, Chris was sort of leaning towards Robinson and Overton, didn't you think?
Understandably, because you want your number 8 to be able to get you a 50 or a 70. You're looking at Bracey at number 7. Is it right for a young kid to make debut at 7? All of a sudden, maybe Broad's next to you at number 8. That's not no disrespect to Stuart Broad. He's got a Test match 100 at Lords, but of late he's not been able to kind of hang around that much. But I personally think I'd go with the best 4 bowlers, and particularly in a couple of Test matches where there's no Ben Stokes and you can't get your balance right. This first Test, I just think it's so important that England get back on the winning trail. They got beaten heavily in India in those last 3 games, and they have to get back to winning ways. So I picked my best 4 bowlers.
Yeah, 20 wickets you need to get, don't you? And you just say to the batters, look, go out there and score the runs for us. I'd go for that bowling attack as well.
So your sorry, say it again, Michael. Your 4 bowlers are.
Well, I'm going Broad, Anderson, Wood and Leach. Honestly, how they bat and what order, apart from, no disrespect, Jimmy's going to be 11. I'm not that bothered where the other 3 bat. It's 8, 9, 10, and just kind of whoever's padded up going at 8. I don't think it'll make much of a difference.
And you'll go with the same 4, Phil?
Yeah, I would do. Definitely. As you say, just for the reasons Mike said there, you want to get off to a good start. And, Broad and Anderson, with all that experience, as you say, you haven't got the likes of Wokes there and Stokes and people like that. You need that experience with the ball for me. So, there's a lot of Test wickets you'll be leaving. If you're leaving one of those out at Lords, they've both got fantastic records at Lords. You can't leave one of them 2 out.
They're just going to get back to winning ways, chappies. As much as we look at the tour of India and it's completely different conditions, it's like a different game that they were playing in India on those pitches. When you're only 7 Test matches away from the Ashes, you've just got to get back to winning ways. And if it means that you play your 2 senior pros this week to try and get you that win, I've been very vocal over the last 2 years of not playing them together and making sure that you're building, but I'm at the stage now with 7 Test matches to go that the building should have been done, and it's now about getting a team to play and win to make sure that they get down to Australia with that winning mentality. And if that means Broad and Anderson play a few more tests this summer to do that, this England team has to start winning games to get the confidence levels up.
Is it understandable?
And does Leach? Sorry, Chappers. Does Leach get you more wickets on a dry Lords pitch, beautiful sunshine, than Overton and Robinson?
Well, it's a good question, Phil, but I need my spinner.
Yeah, just to hold an end.
I can't be having Joe Root as a spinner. The weather. I don't know what it's been like down south, but it's been 26 degrees up north. No, so I can imagine it's been probably 15 degrees down south, though. It's going to
for the last 6 weeks, Phil. 26 degrees every day for the last 6 weeks. As me and Michael tell you all the time.
I don't believe it.
You know, we've seen Lords differ over the years, Phil. In the last few years, it's spun. It really has been a pitch where, you know, the footholds have developed and spinners have had some reward. So, yeah, Jack Leach definitely has to play for me, and it's just those other three seamers. And you know, Ollie Robinson, Craig Everton, good bowlers, very, very consistent, been great in county cricket. They will score you a few runs, but how many more runs will they get you than a Stuart Broad at number 8? But give me Broad's quality of bowler. As I said, it's now 7 test matches before the Ashes. England have got to start winning test matches, and you pick your best 4 bowlers for me this week.
I don't know if you saw yesterday, Phil, but Lancashire's thumping win over Yorkshire took.
I thought you were meant to be impartial, Chappers.
I am.
Are you having an opinion here?
No, not in the slightest.
No, okay.
That's a fact. It just took Lancashire's thumping win over Yorkshire took place in glorious sunshine. That was all I was.
I will say one thing, Chappers.
Parky bowled well, didn't he?
He did, and
consistent.
Yeah,
I was impressed. I think
Saki Moo's going to be a star. And what really, you know, I don't like to see Yorkshire lose a game, and certainly not a Roses clash, but if there was ever a model for a county pitch, that was the model. That is the kind of pitch that you want county cricket to be played on. It did a little bit at the start. Yorkshire didn't bat well enough, and then it got flatter and flatter and flatter. It was a bit of spin, but you had to be a quality spinner to get something out of it. I think Parkinson is that kind of spin bowler, or developing into that kind of spin bowler, and you need to be a quality seamer. It wasn't just that you ran up and it hit the seam and it zipped all over the place on days 2, 3 and 4. You had to be high class, and Saki Mahmood produced a magnificent second innings display. Lancashire were better. I don't like saying that, Chappers, but they were.
I know. Anyhow, we digress slightly. Can I just go back? Is there somebody in your eye line who's just giving you a disapproving look, Michael?
My wife's just coming and she looks like she's pouring a glass of wine, but not for
me. Just on Silverwood's comments about the team will look imbalanced. Is that understandable? Do you both think, given everything that has gone on in the last 12 months, or at the start of the season, should they start with a balanced side?
Well, I think Ben Stokes' injury puts pay to that balance.
That's the single reason for the imbalance.
Ben Stokes plays, you've got a balanced team. If he doesn't, that's why he's so important for this England, or even test match, one day T20.
Yeah, Wokes and Curran, Mike, as well.
Yeah, they're out of the equation. But for someone that bats at 5 and bowls like Ben Stokes, I mean, no team has that quality all round. I mean, you've got, Wokes and Sam Curran would have been that number 8, but they're not going to bat 7, 6 or 5. It's imbalanced for that reason. I'm just looking at great opportunities. As much as it's frustrating that players aren't playing, and when you're only 7 games away, you'd want to be playing your best team if possible. But you look at Burns, he needs to score. Sibley, he needs to score. Sorry, I've got my lad's friends just strolling past here. Crawley, he needs a score from the winter. Joe Root was in great form. Darren Lawrence, I thought he showed great character coming back into the side for that last test in India. And then Pope, brilliant talent, but again, he needs runs, he needs a score. And then you've got Bracey, so it's a really inexperienced top 7. But I look at, six of them actually, of that top 7, apart from Joe Root. And you'd have to say all 6 are probably vying for about 4 spots.
Yeah. Against a very experienced, fantastic seam bowling attack in New Zealand as well. So England batsmen have got to be right on form. Otherwise they could get into a little bit of trouble. I mean, Wagner, fantastic bowler. Southey, experienced, know how to.
Wagner just bowled the bouncers, wasn't he, Phil?
Well, but he's a little bit more than that. He's a little bit more cleverer than that, and so they need to be right on top of their game, England here, or New Zealand. I mean, they're not number 1 for no reason at all. You know what I mean? They have got a good balanced side turning up here on Wednesday.
Jeremy Coney will join us shortly, and we'll talk about New Zealand. Going back to the lines of communication then, and I thought Chris Silverwood was really interesting actually in that interview, Michael, about when he went from bowling coach to head coach, the relationships changed slightly, and he anticipates that they could very well change again here. And he actually mentioned some of his support staff and some of the other coaches who now become, don't they, the equivalent of assistant manager in football. That sort of buffer between the main person at the top and then they've got to be the shoulder to cry on, or they've got to give the tough love.
Well, this is why you need different characters in and around your backroom team to get really into the psyche of all the different styles of players and characters within your team. And the likes of Paul Collingwood, Graham Thorpe, Jeetan Patel. What Chris Silver will be doing, he'll be going around his backroom team and just feeding bits of information into those coaches to try and gather more information from the players, just to see where the players are at. I remember going from being a player to a semi-senior player to being the England captain. It's exactly the same. Players don't come to you straight away when you're the captain because they know that you're the leader and they don't want to show any sign of vulnerability. But in a nice kind of way, I think Chris Silverwood has got the perfect setup. He's got the head position. He's in charge, but he's got a very experienced set of coaches around him. He's got a very good set of people around the county game that are watching the game. The likes of Jonathan Trott, Alex Stewart. Chris is a very popular member of the county circuit from being a coach at Essex, so he's got all the coaches he can ring up. He's got all the umpires. I think he's in a great position. I think it's the right decision that Ashley Giles has made to put Chris in main control. He'll just use his backroom and his kind of personnel around him to get the information that he's required.
Yeah, it won't be coming from Chris Silverwood, that kind of feeling of sort of like, you can't go up and speak to him. I mean, it is a natural progression a little bit. Crikey, the boys will think that. But I'm sure that Chris, and as you say, the backroom staff will put it in place that, come on now, fellas, there's no need to have that sort of separation. You know what I mean? And I think Chris is ideal for that.
Yeah, and he said that, didn't he? He said he wants people to come to him, but wanting them to come to him and whether they will actually come to him are two different things, given the position he now holds.
Well, the one thing about that England dressing room that I have seen over sort of Chris's sort of time in charge is that it's been a very sort of like open forum, if you know what I mean. It's been a very open place where people can, say what they feel, especially with the COVID and what have you. You know what I mean? I'm feeling a little bit like this, and people are getting phoned up. Are you all right? And everything like that. So I think that will just continue, but. It is a fact that, as Mike said, when you become captain, you don't go down the pub so much with your boys.
Well, I
did.
You did.
I wanted to get as close as possible to all of them. I think.
Does this change Joe Root's role then at all? The change in Silverwood's role, does that change what Root
I think, Chappers, the only difference will be that Chris won't be able to pass off a poor selection. I think when you've got a chairman of selectors, you can always pass off some difficult questions in the media to an Ed Smith, or I could do it to David Graham or a Jeff Miller. You can just pass that off. Now you've got to answer the questions. And I think a position of a head coach of England is about coaching. It's about leadership. It's about gathering the culture right in the dressing room, but ultimately it's about talking to the media and through the media about the ideas and the kind of philosophies that you're trying to put across. And that's why I thought Chris spoke brilliantly in that interview, that he was very precise, very clear. And that takes time. When you've gone from being an England player from back in early 2000s to being a county coach, not doing a great deal of media, to suddenly getting the England head coach's draw, and the media's so important, and you're getting to put yourself in front of the cameras more consistently. It takes time to get more confident at doing it. And he's gonna have to explain, like this week. The first question he'll get is,
tricky.
Why? Why did you pick X or Y? Yeah. It's going to be why this week, not what did you make of X or Y? It's going to be why. That's going to be the questions that he's going to get asked on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think Chris will relish it from what I just listened to him there.
Phil, why do you on Zoom always have your head in the bottom left-hand corner? Why aren't you ever in the middle of the screen?
It's resting on my draining board, that's why.
you pop out from the corner, don't you? What were you saying, Phil? Sorry.
Well, no, I think Chris will relish that. I think that he likes that. I mean, he said, when you're losing games of cricket, the coach is the one that you come to anyway, So when you're losing games of cricket, it doesn't matter whether you're now the chairman of selectors, so to speak, or or the coach. You're going to be put under that pressure. So I think he's a very straightforward kind of guy, Chris. Chris, yeah. So I think he'll take that on board and relish it.
Before we bring in Jeremy Coney, just one on Hasib Hamid, who you obviously asked Chris about there, Michael. We talked to Luke Fletcher last week about him, as well as several other things with Luke last week. But it's a great story.
Yeah. I actually, when I first heard it, I was like, I'm a bit surprised by that. Has he done enough, and has he produced enough consistency to be thrown back into the Test squad? And then I thought, no, wait a minute. What England are trying to do is probably just put him under a bit of pressure that he's in the thoughts. Mm-hmm. So when he goes back to play for Notts now, he knows that England are thinking about him. Whereas before, he might not have known that. And I think that's almost the next jump. I remember, being a player back in the day, and you had little whispers that the England A selectors were looking at you for the tour for the winter, and you go out to play that game and you do feel a bit more pressure because you're desperate to get a score to try and get on a tour, and that's what it's about. It's almost like feeding a bit of pressure into players to say to them, right, you're a good player. He can't play the way that he did as a young kid in India and not have another time. He must have another time, whether it's this year, next year, we'll have to wait and see. But I have no question that Hasib Hamid, he will play for England again in Test match cricket. It's just a matter of when. Whether it's come a bit too soon, there'll be probably a few around the county traps thinking, I think I might have done a bit more and deserve a chance. But I think England have seen something in him. I think they've seen a bit of leadership in him as well. So I was absolutely delighted for the kid. I'm not too sure whether he'll play this summer, but what he has to keep doing is knocking on the door. Up until this round of championship match, he was averaging 52. He had an indifferent game in the last round, but if he continues to get runs, if he continues to play in a team that's been winning, which Notts have been doing, he'll put himself in a good position to potentially get on the big tour at the end of the season, which is against obviously Australia.
Yeah, they've obviously seen something that they like, haven't they? And especially, as you say, Chris's way that he wants to set up his Test team. He likes to have those guys who can take it deep up the top. But also, Luke said, didn't he, last week, that he's actually looking to put back to ball a little bit more now, isn't he? If the ball's there, he's actually looking to hit it for four, looking to get on the front foot, looking to sort of like impose himself a little bit more on bowlers than just sort of hang around. So he's obviously gone away. It's taken him a little bit of time, but he's worked on his game. Obviously the coaches have told him what he needs to improve on, and he looks like he's sort of going about it the right way.
I'd like to see Luke Fletcher as a selector.
Yeah.
I like Luke Fletcher. I like him, don't we, Phil?
What a place to be a chef.
He was. You're not the first person who's asked me about that this week. I'll be honest with you, Phil. He was a fun interviewee, wasn't he? Right, let's talk New Zealand, who come into this series second in the world behind India. They, of course, play India in the World Test Championship final after this series. Delighted to say Jeremy Coney will be part of the TMS team during this series, and he joins us now. Evening, Jeremy.
Hello, Mark. How are things?
Very, very good, thank you. How are you?
Evening, Jez.
Hello, Tuffers. Yeah, well, I've had four COVID tests. I've had 4 COVID tests. I've got an MIQ voucher to get me back into New Zealand. I'm self-isolating at the moment. I did think, actually, as I've been looking outside for about the last 2 weeks, it's been raining a hell of a lot here, hasn't it? And I did wonder, and I did hear it was sort of the wettest May on record.
Yeah.
England always like things on record, don't they? I mean, they have everything's a sort of a world award-winning crisps or chips or something like that to go with your beer. Anyway, I thought it might become a seam shootout, if you know, for Lords. All the games sort of rained off and those sort of things in the last few rounds of the county championship. But look, in the last couple of days, it's been lovely. And so maybe it won't be quite so bad. Let's wait and see what the surface is going to be like.
Before we get to the cricket, just on the COVID situation, it has been. Has it been as I mean, you talk about how rigorous it's been for you as well. The players have been in a similar situation, I'm guessing, as they've come from all around the world.
Yeah, a few of them have gone from the IPL, of course, and they went back either to the Maldives, not quite so far, and some to New Zealand. One had to remain behind because he had a positive test. And then the rest have just come from New Zealand in sort of two bits. They've been down at Southampton for a few days. They've had an intra-squad kind of match. And now they've come up on Monday to Lords. So actually, Lords can be quite an experience for younger people. And when you suddenly arrive at this place called Lords, I was first given my book when I was 3 or 4, one of those thick cardboard books that you put over, as a kid for Christmas, and you've got a caramel stuck in between them and that sort of thing. And you see a photo of, dare I say it, Trevor Bailey playing a thing called a forward defence at Lords, and you build up this image of what this place is like. I don't think New Zealand will have any trouble, actually, to be honest, getting up for a match or thinking about the test final or whatever it is in Southampton in a couple of weeks. They will be very keen to do well. It's quite a well-travelled side. They're one of our more experienced sides, I think. Settled in the batting, settled in the bowling. They won't be a pushover. I remember in 2015, I think the last time they were here, and maybe McCullum was captain, we had that, riotous test, didn't we, where Stokes got some, wasn't it? Hundreds of runs.
Yeah. It did a lot for England, actually, Jeremy, didn't it? It almost did a lot for England as well, didn't it?
Well, they caught the cold, didn't they, really?
Yes.
And they just carried on. And they actually out-hit New Zealand. New Zealand, I thought, made a bit of a mistake when they only had 2 sessions effectively to get 350. They went for them. And I wondered in a 2-test series myself as I was watching it whether it was the most sensible. But that was Brendan. As I say, everyone loved the whole game, and England bowled New Zealand, and then New Zealand won the second test. So it was a fair enough kind of result. They've got better since then. They're slightly more, suck it in and get, as you just mentioned about Silverwood, they like big first innings runs, and then they look at how can we get 20 wickets. And that's what they've been doing. And they've been playing on very green pitches in New Zealand. They've basically gotten to the final on home victories. As most teams are much better at home, like England have got a very strong record at home as well. They seem to be at different phases, though, the two teams. I don't know whether you guys think that about the England side, whether there's just a whole lot of them out because of COVID and because of injuries and because of other things. It seems as though there are quite a few A-listers missing.
Yep. Yeah,
Jeremy, that doesn't mean they're going to lose at all. I'm not suggesting that, and they're weak. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a bit. They seem to be at different phases. You've got 3 quite young batsmen in the top 6.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 openers who are county stalwarts who do a solid job for you. And then you've got Root, of course. And then you've got Bracey, who's now at number 7, I would think, now that he's going to keep. And he's going to have to look after quite a long tail.
Yes, that's right. I'd put New Zealand as favourites, Jeremy, really.
Well, I reckon sort of evens, Tuffers. I don't know.
Yeah. What will be the New Zealand team, Jeremy? What are we looking at from a New Zealand perspective?
Surely.
Well, I think that, as I said, a fairly settled lineup. You can probably pick 6 of the top 7 straight away. You'd pick Latham at the top, 56 tests. He's averaging in the 40s. You get a guy at 3 called Williamson, 83 tests. Taylor, 105 tests and the most runs, over 7,000, nearly 7,500. Nichols has had 37 tests. He's the number 5, the left-hander. And then you've got Watling in his last series, 73 tests, averaging 38 as the keeper with 800s. So, and the only 2 contestable spots really at the moment is who's going to accompany Latham as the opener and number 7, sort of a bit of a shootout between the 2 all-rounders. So the opening lineup is an interesting one, actually. There are 3 guys. One is we turned a keeper into an opener, and he's averaged 30 and done pretty well. Got 100 in Aussie at MCG, a couple of 50s against the Indian seamers on a spiteful pitch down in Christchurch. And then you've got a guy, Will Young, who's come over to Durham and played a few games over here just recently in this, in the April-May period, and got a couple of hundreds as well. And then you got the guy that's really interesting, though, is Devon Conway. Yeah. He's a South African fella. He came to New Zealand in 2018. He's played a couple of franchises in South Africa before he came over. And since then, he's just cleaned all our domestic honours, and he's got 9 triple centuries. This guy can bat. He's got over 100 first-class matches, that including South Africa. And he's only had 3 ODIs, and he's averaging 100 in those. And sure enough, they were against Bangladesh. And he's played 14 T20s, and he's averaging 75, batting at 4. So he's got the numbers, and he says the right things. I like what he says. He says, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to get on with my job. I'm going to adjust to the conditions of the surface and also of the game. He's just a nice, logical kind of thinker. Yeah. So he would be my pick, and I think he has the potential to be a superior player at Test level. He showed he can handle it.
Yeah, and wonderfully led, Jeremy. You said again by Kane Williamson. Everyone just seems to just sort of like gather behind him, don't they? Yeah,
they do. They trust him.
Yeah.
The other new one you guys may not have seen. Have you seen Kyle Jamieson
in the IPL?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he got hit a bit in the IPL, but in Test cricket, I mean, sure, he's played only 6 tests and in New Zealand, but he's already nearly 40 wickets. So he's averaging 13 with the ball, 4 sets of 5 wickets and 1 of 10. He's as tall as Joel Garner. And his optics are quite hard. You know what I mean? The red ball, he'll be coming out of that sight screen with the pavilion behind him, the red ball and all the red-faced members.
Going to need bigger sight screen.
Certainly in this weather, Jeremy, at the moment.
Yeah, I know. So he'll be interesting if he starts to bowl well and get it right his end. He'll provide some interesting challenges, I think. So, Is
this all about, very quickly, Jeremy, is this all about building up for that final against India without doing this series a disservice?
No, it's not, Mark.
No.
That they will not be in the slightest, but they are not like that. They take each test match as an event, as a chance to, improve what they are. They're quite a solid little unit, you know what I mean? And I've seen different ones, to be honest. But this lot seem quite grounded, just the way they play. So that's why I say I don't think they'll be a push-up. Yes, they can be beaten. Of course they can. Any team can. But they'll give of their best, and they'll try their hardest, and they'll think about what they're doing, and they'll try and sort of put some plans away and all that sort of stuff. So I think they'll test that. It'll be a good test for the English too.
Jeremy, thank you very much for coming on. Jeremy, part of the TMS team when the game gets underway on Wednesday morning.
See you Wednesday, mate.
I know Jeremy said, it's probably 50-50, but he then went on to tell us about a bloke who hit a 100 and their new bowler is the size of Joel Garner.
Yeah. Listen, I think they're a solid. I couldn't make him more right. Solid side, bags of experience in that batting lineup as well, Mike. Loads of Test matches under their belt.
Phil, I think to be number one for a period, and to get to the Test Championship. I know there's debate about the scoring of the Test Championship, but New Zealand deserve to be there. So they're a high-class Test match team. England are a team that, let's be honest, it's pretty much an A team, isn't it? The top seven, you're missing.
New Zealand a bit further on in their development,
absolutely,
or just have more of their first choice available.
Two teams that over the years have been very, very difficult to beat at home. England don't lose many Test series at home, and New Zealand don't lose many Test series at home, and both teams have struggled when they've travelled, and that's why I see this as a very 50-50 contest. It wouldn't surprise me if it's 1-1. It wouldn't surprise me at all if each team have a better week. But this New Zealand team will take some beating. It's just whether they've had enough, real good cricket. I look at England; they've all played, some good. There's only Sibley, with the finger injury, he's not been playing much cricket, so it might be difficult for him. But Burns has played a lot of county stuff. Crawley the same. Joe Root's played a lot for Yorkshire. Lawrence, Pope played a lot of county stuff. So they're all kind of county ready. It's just whether they can cope with the pressure and the mentality of what Test match cricket brings, and they're up against a quality team. So it's going to be a great challenge for the England team.
This is 5 Live Sport.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show.